Good evening. You're expecting a debate. You probably went to those other channels to get like a debate, but here's the real deal right here on American Scouser TV. It's the ASTV EPL Panel show, and we've only got the three of us today, which means I'm going to have to be trying to like keep these lads apart. Let's see if we can get that. There we go. Keep these lads apart. Because it's an Arsenal man and a Spurs man and the North London Derby, which I only found out today is called the NLD. Never heard that before in my life. That's how old I am. Is on this weekend. So we will definitely have a good long chat about that. But today's show is going to be fairly short-ish, so that we can go and watch that pretend debate. This is where the real stuff happens, though. Soccer is where the real stuff happens. I don't know anybody tell you differently. It's still real to me, damn it. But we're joined by Alan and Jake. Alan, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I'm all alert for the next 45 minutes, and then I'll slowly fade. Jake, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just hoping you don't have to mute my mic when Alan's talking like they do in the other debate.
Yeah. That's a good thing about our one, is we don't have to do that. But International Week this week, so nothing much to talk about for the previous weekend that relates to us, other than for Arsenal, Odegaard being injured, Declan Rice scoring against Ireland, but not being available for the North London Derby because of the
gruesome red card,
and then the panel confirming that red card. And I believe, just from what I read, Jake, I think Richarlison is the only one that seriously could miss out on the Spurs selection that you would actually maybe worry about. Or does anybody even worry about Richarlison anymore, even in his own house?
I mean, when you don't have another number 9, you do want something, some option, even if it is Richarlison. But I think Big Dom is going to be healthy, so we don't really need Richarlison for this one, but always good to make up the numbers.
We heartily endorse Big Dominic Solanke for you. Didn't quite make it at Liverpool, but you know he was a good lad. Just didn't have that X factor that you need, I think, for a Liverpool team that had Salah. To be fair, and a good evening to Suzy. So let's go straight into it. Let us look at the fixtures ahead, because we've nothing to look back on per se. Fixtures ahead. The big one is obviously Spurs and Arsenal, and we will spend most of the time, I believe, talking about that. Liverpool are playing Forest, hoping to keep that run going. Forest should be, on paper, not an easy game, but certainly a game we should look to win and continue that functional run, because we're looking very solid and functional rather than chaotic and brilliant. And I think my cardiologist is quite thankful for that. But Southampton United, that looks like one that it's only 3 games in. It's not really a relegation 6-pointer, but I could not tell who's going to win between these two, Alan. It's just so up in the air with Manchester United, and Southampton are probably where they deserve to be in terms of just pure quality. I think the Southampton dream is dying out, where everybody was buying their players because they had a great scouting system. But Southampton United, Alan, where do you see that going? Is that another Eric Ten Hag snatch defeat from the jaws of victory masterclass for you?
I can see that happening. Of course, Southampton's been horrible. They played horribly this whole, the first 3 games of the season. This could be a good match for United to bounce back on and solidify Ten Hag's tenure at United for a little bit longer. Hopefully, we wanted to keep going. We want him to still be the manager. So if he wins, that means, of course, he's got to win here, but it just means that more Ten Hag football and more wins against United for all of us.
I think Ten Hag is probably the manager that has more opposition fans supporting him than home fans supporting him, and long may that continue. But Jake, we could reasonably flip what Alan just said there for Southampton, couldn't we? You're having a bad run at Southampton. United is probably the big team you want to get out of all the so-called big teams, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think just because, they carry the weight of being a big team, it gives you an extra boost, especially if you get that win, even if they are in bad form like they are this season and previous seasons. So I think it's a great opportunity for Southampton. I don't think they've really shown anything that have given me any hope for them. I think they go back straight down. But, this could be a turning point if they show up against one of the historic Big Six sides, and it's Ten Hag's team. I think it happened. So
It's not random, isn't it? They could look like Brazil 1970 for about minutes and then just fall apart and look like Alan Brazil, who is 70. For anybody who knows who Alan Brazil is, but yeah, he used to play for United and is a round pundit these days. City versus Brentford. That, Alan, that's on paper. That's just a City walkover, really, isn't it? I mean, Brentford are doing Brentford things. They wouldn't be reasonably expected to get anything out with this game. But is Thomas Frank one of those managers who just pulls those kinds of results out of his backside when you don't least expect it? Or is this going to be, Haaland hat-trick number 507 for this season?
I can see both happening. I can definitely see City, just dominating the entire match and Haaland getting 6 goals. But this is, Thomas Frank has done well with Brentford. He is, he may have lost his top scorer, but at the same time, he's going to be able. He's got the tactics to beat teams like City. He's good enough to do that. So we'll see what happens. I think Brentford can probably pull out a point. That's probably the most I can see happening from them. But still, a point out of City would be great.
Jake, you talk about having a number 9 for Spurs. Haaland as a talent, to me, he's a generational talent. There's no doubt about it for me. He would grace any team and be the top scorer on pretty much any team he goes to, wouldn't he?
Absolutely. I think there's been a lot of doubt coming into when he joined the Premier League that it was just going to be the players around him doing everything, and anyone on City could do the job. But we saw that's not the case. He went above and beyond people's expectations, and he would grace any team, like you said. So I think this is another City win, but I'm kind of rooting for the title race sake that they drop points at some point, because it's going to be tough for Arsenal to come back if City win this matchup and then Arsenal are dropping 3 points this weekend. So,
as they do. But here's what I want to ask you, Jake, though. In terms, there was a point in Haaland's career where he was probably gettable by any club with money. And for a team like Spurs, you have a good team and you have an excellent manager as far as I'm concerned. But a Haaland would be somebody almost like Kane, where you can actually build the entire attack around what that player is capable of doing. And if you can get the ball to them in the box 6 times a game, he's going to get you maybe 2 goals, 3 goals over 2 games every 2 weeks. Is that a lesson that clubs should take more risks on high-scoring youngsters before they break into first teams, instead of taking the kind of let's just wait and see because he might just fall apart after his 21st birthday kind of a deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can see with the model of a lot of the clubs in the Premier League these days is they're buying a lot of young players and then either keeping them in the system on the bench or loaning them out and just taking a chance on them, because it's only anywhere from like 5 to 15 million pounds, and that's a steal these days for a could be talent. So I think it's definitely a great philosophy, and Haaland's a great example. I know Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was huge on him and wanted to sign him when he was United's manager, and obviously that never happened, and he went to the other side of Manchester, and they'll rue that day for a long time. But I think it's great when teams buy young and take a punt on someone, and whether or not you loan them straight back to that team you bought them from, which we see happen more and more often, or just bring them right in, see if they can fit into the squad. I have no problem with spending on youth.
Alan, Arsenal at one point, way back when I was a childer, as they say in Ireland, when I was knee high to a grasshopper, which is essentially the same height I am now. Arsenal were known for taking young players, usually from Ireland, but also from Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and putting them in their system and then blooding them in the first team fairly early. They always had these kind of iconic young players from the mid-70s to about the early 90s, before Wenger even got the job. Kind of George Graham kind of changed it a little bit, and then Wenger came in. Suddenly we've got all these unknowns like Anel getting like Henry, who he took a chance on for next to nothing in financial terms and reaped huge rewards. For a team like Arsenal, you guys have a young team now, and a lot of those players are players that Arteta took a chance on, and it didn't work out for the first season and a half. It just looked like a project.
Yeah.
But now it looks like the real deal. If you're somebody like Chelsea who just seems to be vacuuming players up and hoping for the best and don't have a plan for them, should you be casting an eye towards a club like Arsenal and even Spurs to an extent as well? Because Spurs take risks on players that nobody else did, like Son, for example, and the managers who nobody expected much of. But if you're Chelsea, with all that money and all that drama and all those 47 substitutes that you can't fit on the bench and there's not even enough tracksuits for, would you be looking at Arsenal quietly and going, should have done it that way?
They should have, honestly. They have one of the best academies in England, maybe even Europe and the world, in Coven, I think it's pronounced, but they've had a lot of players come out of that academy and do really well. And not for Chelsea. They've done it well elsewhere. They don't invest on those players. They let them and loan them out and then eventually sell them so they can go ahead and grab whatever big name player that Todd Bowley reads about in while he's playing FIFA or whatever. Like that's the strategy over at Chelsea right now. Like with Arsenal, they have taken bets on themselves with their academy. I mean, a lot of these players unfortunately didn't end up playing for Arsenal first team, but in the long term. But you got Eddie Nketiah, who was actually really good for the moments that he got on. You got Emile Smith-Rowe. You got Reece Nelson as well. I mean, we made money off all three of those players just now by selling them. That's profit. That's 100% profit right there. No sign-on clause from the start. The other thing too is, we took in bets on like young players like Odegaard was 30 million from Real Madrid, and everyone was thinking that maybe he was past, whatever everyone thought of him. Like everyone thought he was this wonder kid, and all of a sudden he wasn't. Now we took that risk and got him. Martinelli as well. Martinelli failed in the United Academy, got him for next to nothing out of Brazil for about 3 million. So, and he's, maybe he's struggling this season, but he has done wonders as a young kid as he is. And Saka for one, the star boy from our academy. So there's that.
Jake, there is a lesson there in terms of making that investment, but that seems to be the model now almost. That's the new risk and reward, isn't it? If you take these young kids into your academy and develop them, if you get 2 out of a batch of 10 that make the first team, you're doing well. But the other you're going to make a bit of profit on, and that's maybe something supporters have to, especially supporters of clubs where they have academies that they believe in. And I'm not gilding the lily here at all, but Arsenal fans take interest in their academy. Spurs fans take interest in their academy. Liverpool fans do. United fans used to for a while. I don't think it's the same anymore. I don't think they think their academy's up to much. But you invest in these players emotionally, and then when 8 don't make it and they get released or they get sold on, you kind of get disappointed with the club because they're not. It looks like they're fudging the numbers and they're trying to make the accounts look good. But that is the modern way of doing football finances now, isn't it? And football recruitment.
Absolutely, and it's a patient game. And as a fan, you got to understand that because it's not a win now model. It's a win in 4 or 5 years. I mean,
the Everton model, you mean?
They
just extended to the first team.
I said 4 to 5 years, not 4.
Oh, right, sorry, not 45. Yeah, fair play.
But yeah,
how long has it been since 61? Sorry.
So I mean, if you look at where Arsenal were when they brought in Arteta, it frustrated some fans, and they had to stick with him because it was not a win now model. It was win 2 or 3 seasons on from then. So that's proving successful relatively. So it's a great path to follow. But yeah, it is tough when you have young players coming through the academy and you're attached to them and they just don't make it in your first team. My dog is named Winks, so he's now at Leicester. So it was tough to see him go. But you made 15 million off him. You made 20 million off Oliver Skip from the academy. So it's where the better money is because you're not paying anything transfer wise to bring them in. They're from your own academy. That's why Chelsea are able to buy 30 people this summer because they sold one academy player and Conor Gallagher. So I don't know. It's like I said, a patient game, and as a fan, it's tough to wait, but hopefully it pays off. It's paying off right now for Arsenal, and hopefully other clubs can see that model and follow that.
Speaking of Leicester, they're playing Palace away this Saturday. Alan, that is relegation battle written all over it, doesn't it? You expect that game to be a vital game for one of those teams next March, as much as it is right now in September, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is. I do have a soft spot for Crystal Palace, so I do hope that they do well. Leicester, Leicester hasn't won yet this season. I don't see, and neither has Crystal Palace. So maybe this could be an opportunity for both teams to, put it all out there and see if they can get all 3 points or maybe even get a draw.
Jake, Villa and Everton, we don't have Shay with us this week. I'm sure you'd have plenty to say. Villa, I think they have a superb manager, and Everton have a manager who looks like he hasn't got his ideas across, or his ideas aren't good enough to get across. A win for Villa here against Everton, it really puts Everton right in it, doesn't it, already? 4 games in.
Yeah, it's not a game you expect Everton to win or even get points from. So it's tough to say that it's like gonna damn them to relegation. But I do think that 4 in a row off the bounce to start the year, it's hard to come back from. But as we've seen in these relegation battles, it just takes 1 or 2 little spurts of good form, and there's so little points earned at the bottom of the table that if you get 2 or 3 wins in a row, you're right back out and you're in safety. So can't write them off yet, but I do think they lose this one again.
Alan, Fulham, West Ham. We don't have Alex here this week to talk about Fulham, but they're doing well. West Ham, it's not working out, I don't believe, as well as they maybe had expected given the quality of the manager. But they're not a lost cause by any means, are they?
Mm-hmm. No, I don't think West Ham is a lost cause. There's the change of manager, and they probably should have stuck with David Moyes. But it is what it is. And they got a lot of good players on that team. They made a lot of good signings. They just got to start clicking. Fulham is a really good team. I know for a fact that's the truth. There's 6 former Arsenal players on that team right now. So,
but they didn't have to move far.
No, they didn't. It was a good move for them. Eddie should have joined them too. But no, Fulham's is also, these are 2 mid-table teams that are looking to bounce into the top 10 and see if they can maybe make a run for Europe. They're down now, but they should. It should be a good matchup. I could see Fulham's at home, so I say Fulham wins. So.
Jake, Brighton, Ipswich Town. Brighton are doing quite well. Kind of showing how good planning in the background can help you, no matter who the manager is. Ipswich Town have actually looked good. Yeah. Ipswich Town though have looked good despite the results not going their way all the time. This could actually be an entertaining game, couldn't it, Jake?
Absolutely. I think both teams score here. I like Brighton to come out on top. I think they do well at home, and I think they have so many attacking options this season that they should have the firepower to get past a pretty leaky Ipswich Town. But I don't want to write them off completely. I think they could possibly even score 2 here. So I think Brighton will need 2 at least, maybe even 3 to get all 3 points here.
Alan, Bournemouth and Chelsea. I think we're probably all 3 of us agree we hope Bournemouth win, but on paper it's not likely. But actually, evidence despite their big score there last weekend, or the weekend before rather, or the week before in the cup, I think wasn't it? They had a good result. They still look odds and ends. They still look like a team that have been directionless. and they're still a little bit directionless under a new manager. If you were Bournemouth, you'd probably fancy something out of this game, wouldn't you?
I would think so. I would think that Chelsea haven't really had a good start to the season. They've won one, they've drawn, and they've lost. So Bournemouth is they're probably looking at a chance of like, hey, we can knock off one of these big teams and start looking better and build some momentum off of that. So hopefully Bournemouth can pull it off, because screw Chelsea.
Yeah, I think that's as accurate an analysis as we ever need. And then before we get to the meat and potatoes for this week's show, Wolves Newcastle, Jake. Wolves are doing dreadful, but Newcastle, they need to put a run together at some point, don't they, to show that they're not just pretenders.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they continue to put out the offensive output and get 3 points here, but Wolves at home, or rather going to Wolves is never an easy task for anyone. And although Wolves have looked pretty woeful, especially that second half against Chelsea, they might put up a fight here. But I don't know. I like Isak and Gordon, and maybe even you get Harvey Barnes another start up top, and I think they put Wolves to the sword.
Let's just have a quick look at the table. It's 3 games in, so it's not important, and so much is going to change. But Brighton's still up there. Arsenal kind of needs a couple of wins without those two players. Alan, don't you? Like, you guys need to make sure that Odegaard and Declan Rice aren't the team, even just psychologically, don't you?
Yeah, these are big leaders. These are our captain for one, and also, and Declan Rice is definitely like a leader of men in general. Like he is a good focal point in that midfield. He's definitely going to be missed. Whether or not we are losing Odegaard for this game is not to be known yet. It's going to be like, I think, a Friday decision as to if he's going to be on the squad or not. Although that injury did look bad. If Spurs were ever going to have a good result against Arsenal, this would be it. And as unfortunate as I don't like saying that, I don't ever want to say, put excuses out there. Either way, I still think we're going to win. But missing those 2 key pieces in our midfield is going to be tough. So.
Jake, Spurs in 10th, a win, a draw, and a loss. Like at this point now, you have to start beating the bell curve, really, don't you?
Yeah, we're just trying to spread it all out. One of everything. It's been disappointing. We should have picked up 3 points against Leicester and maybe even 3 points against Newcastle. I think we were the better team there, but it's all right. I think going into this Arsenal match, I think it comes at the best time for us, just based on how Arsenal are looking depth-wise, and it being at home for us. So, yeah, kind of like what Alan was saying. If there was a time for Spurs to get a win against Arsenal, it would be this one.
And then bottom of the table, Chelsea in 11th. All these could change so rapidly over the course of the next 3 games, but except for maybe Everton, who are really in perilous trouble. But so are United. If United don't put a run together, that could be a hard trap to get out of, Alan, being in that bottom half of the table, especially with a team that looks week by week like they're losing confidence in the manager.
If it keeps on going and they keep on having poor results, it could happen again. And by that I mean it could happen to them being relegated as one of the only top 6 teams that gets relegated, for the first time in they got relegated in the 70s. So that'd be fucking awesome.
It'd be even better if an ex-United player relegates them like Dennis Law did.
Yeah.
Playing for City, no less, with that little back heel. So let's get to the dramatic, pivotal moment of today's show. Spurs against Arsenal. It's for a neutral point of view, it's always been an entertaining game, and going back to the days when there was almost zero soccer on television back home, and you had the big match on Sunday, which would show a Sunday game. And I do remember, especially because television channels were London based a lot, and the ones we got in Ireland were the London channels. Spurs Arsenal was always one to watch. There was always flash about those two clubs. There was always a good level of soccer. There was never any clogger kind of games, where like a Wimbledon versus Millwall. Let's whoever has the least amount of blood lost at the end of the 90 minutes wins. Both have managers who are in their own ways personalities, and in their own ways have a defined philosophy and a very technical philosophy. So Alan, let's be all 1980s 1990s business management about a little SWOT analysis. What are the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats for Arsenal in this game?
In this game, our strength is going to be our attacking play. We're most likely going to have a front three of Havertz, Saka, and Trossard. There's goals in each of those players to be found. Whether Odegaard or Nwaneri is feeding those passes to the final third is to be seen. But all three of those players are playmakers, and even if Trossard doesn't start, we do have Martinelli as well, who's shown to be really good. The other strength that we have is our defense, by far the best defense in the Premier League. There's
I mean, we've conceded 0 goals so far.
It's fine, whatever. But no, we got Saliba, Gabriel, White, and then either Timber, Calafiori, or Zinchenko. All four of those, that four lineup right there, the first four that I mentioned, by far, can put an end to this game immediately by not allowing any goals to be scored by Son or whoever you guys bring on. Kuleveski, that guy, okay, whatever. But the other thing too is, our weakness this weekend is going to be the midfield. I mean, we'll have to rely on Jorginho, maybe a youngster like Nwaneri. Maybe you have to put on, Partey has to play, in the 6 and struggle like he has in the past. So, see.
Jake, just before I ask you the same question, I just want to say that Kulusevski always looks to me like a 1970s Soviet era Russian garbage man. He just looks like he has that heaviness of the world. Like I have to hold and then go back to my wife and kids who I hate. But what are the strengths for Spurs in this game, and what are the possible weaknesses you may have that Arsenal can exploit?
I think our strength is going to be possession and controlling the ball in their half of the field. I think we've seen with Arsenal previously that, in some games they can cede possession if it's warranted. And I think Spurs are going to capitalize on that. And I think we're going to play most of the game in our attacking half, which will be great. But I do think that is going to leave us open to the counterattack. And I do think that Arsenal will start Martinelli to have a very pacey front line and be able to break through our high line, and will likely score on a counterattack. But I think Spurs will have the majority of the chances. I think it's going to be played mostly in Arsenal's defensive 18, and hopefully we can just convert. If we have Big Dom out there, I think we have a really good chance of putting 2 or more past them. I think that's what we're missing against Newcastle. We just didn't have a clinical finisher. I think we have enough creative players in there with Madison and Kulusevski, and then some straight shooters with Johnson and Son and Big Dom. So it's gonna be a fun game. I think maybe even 2 goals apiece. I think it's gonna be pretty open, end-to-end stuff, maybe like a basketball game rather. So we'll see. I hope we end up on the right side of the scoreline this time, but it's Tottenham, so there's always something in the back of my head saying we could lose this 4-0 at home. So
it's funny. It's funny he says that, because I can see I'm saying the same thing to myself. Like, we can definitely win this, but man, Something can happen.
And let me ask you this question: what about Spurs? What players or strategies even do you perceive to be a threat? What worries you about the Spurs team?
Son, honestly, that's the
I
only.
mean, he is magic. He is.
He's
Any
by
team
far on all Spurs. The only player I would take is Son to play for Arsenal because he is a threat no matter what. As old as he now is for a football player. You know, he's what 30, 31. You know, he's still pretty clinical and very, you know, lethal when he gets in front of goal, except for that one time last year, which honestly, how does he miss that? Jake, how does he miss that? Really?
He loves Tottenham too much to score that goal.
He loves Tottenham too much to not go to the Champions League.
Absolutely. It's worth it. There's levels to these things. Come on.
Jake, what do you perceive to be the threats from Arsenal? You know, they do have a good quick attack, but Odegaard is a huge loss and Declan Rice is a huge loss for that one game. Is there areas of the Arsenal team that you know, with City, if one player's out, they've got a high quality replacement. So you're just going there. It doesn't matter, does it? Let's just hope for the best. But are there threats and Spurs that make you go, you know what? I hope something happens to that player between now and Sunday.
Yeah, I think that player was Odegaard because the passes, you know, through the lines they're just killer, especially against a team like Spurs and the way we play, very front foot and with our fullbacks, you know, up in the attack. There's a lot of room to exploit. So him being out is, you know, a huge plus for Spurs. I was really worried about him coming into this match. You know, Rice obviously big miss for them because he controls that midfield so well, and I think it's really going to fall in that back line. I think they're going to have to be very stout defensively, which they've shown they can be. So I think it's going to be, like I said, a lot of Tottenham chances, but I think that Arsenal back four is going to do a really good job of, you know, shutting us down when we get that final ball in. So I think it's going to be like a lot of, that's a huge chance. It's actually cleared by Gabriel or Saliba. So hopefully we can find one that sneaks through and in the final ball actually finds the back of the net. But I think it's going to be a lot of frustration on Tottenham's attacking end. And it could, you know, end up being Arsenal getting the 3 points if they're clinical on their chances on the counterattack.
Alan, I'll ask you this, and then we'll go to Jake for the exact same question. I often have thought in my 107 years of existence and watching football, that when a game is not on a knife edge, but when it's two technically attacking teams who like to use the ball, very often the goalkeepers can be the difference makers. Is that going to be a concern for either team in this game, do you think? Will the goalkeeper emerge as being the one that wins the game for their team?
I could see that for Arsenal. David Raya is by far one of the best keepers in the country, in the league. So we'll see. I see Jake over there laughing, but it's fine. It's perfectly fine. But I do believe that if it comes down to the goalkeepers, David Raya is one to rise to the occasion, especially at the North London derby. So I believe in him. You know, he's got all the backing of the managers, of course. Like we moved on from Ramsdale and made him the main guy, and he has taken that, you know, from the get-go, just proven that he is the right man for the job. So I expect nothing less.
Jake, what about your keeper? Is your keeper going to be the difference maker, do you think?
I hope not. I hope neither keeper is the difference maker. I want it to be played by the outfield players and have it determined that way. Obviously, there was some question marks around Vicario and set pieces last season, especially with Ben White and his trickery. So hopefully nothing like that occurs this time, and it comes down to either team's build-up play, attacking prowess, and something like that. And we're not talking next week about an error by the keeper, you know, giving the game away. I'm fine with, you know, either keeper being praised for, you know, making 6 saves and really putting the team on their back. but I hope it doesn't come down to a lacking on one end of the sticks.
Alan, for the kind of final tactical analysis part, do either manager, and especially Arteta, we're kind of finding out now what it's like under Slot to have a manager who changes the game plans. Klopp never did. He made like-for-like changes, and it was more of the same until, let's beat the brick wall till it falls over kind of a deal. Do either Arteta or Big Ange, do they have plan Bs? Are you confident that Arteta can change something if it comes to a stalemate situation?
I'm confident that he will this early in the season. I mean, obviously, last year, he was very stubborn, and unfortunately, that did come to our detriment towards the end of the season because we could have gone for the 3 points against City. But I'm expecting that with how early everything is right now, that he'll have to adapt, especially since he doesn't have his main midfield. All three of his midfield starters are most likely to be out of this game. So he'll have to continuously adapt. So I want him to make changes where they need to be made. If he doesn't, then that could be the deciding factor, because I can definitely see Ange making the right changes.
Jake, what about Ange? I mean, watching him at Celtic when he was the Celtic manager, one of the biggest complaints was that he didn't change the game. It was just, can we go faster, boys? Let's just go faster. Let's 120 miles an hour? No, go 125 miles an hour. Come on, lads. But is it going to be a case where Ange's plan has to work?
Yeah, he's pretty outspoken about the fact that he sticks to his guns, and he's like, we're going to play this way. I don't care how everyone else plays. We're going to play our football, and if we don't win that way, then we don't deserve to win. But the extent of his flexibility that I've seen so far is he put Maddison and Kulusevski both in the midfield, which is a very attacking option when we're going against a lesser side or we need a goal to get a draw or the win. And then he's put on Dragusin twice, I think, to form a back three of center backs when we are, protecting the lead. I think he's only done that twice. So hopefully we find ourselves in that position where, 80th minute where we're protecting a 1-goal lead and you put on Dragusin to help with that set piece presence. But I don't know. I don't see him being that flexible. And I think if, we go down, he's just going to change out the attackers and put fresh legs. I know Timo Werner's scary down that left wing, so you don't want to see him coming off the bench. But I don't see him doing anything drastic, even if we're down. I think it's just, like you said, faster. Be better, play our system better. That's pretty much what it comes down to for him.
Win the duels. That's Arteta. Neither side is flexible, to be honest. And yeah. For Arteta, it's going to be did you win the duel? No, fucking get the fuck out there and win the fucking duel.
So before we wrap up for the night and go watch the debate, that's not as fun as this one. Adam, give me a score prediction that you're going to hang your hat on for next week. That Jake can come back to you with.
2-0 Arsenal.
Jake, do you agree with that? Obviously not, but that's fairly definitive.
Ooh, I'm gonna go 3-1 Spurs.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go. I think from a neutral's perspective, I think both teams are good enough to hurt each other, and also both teams have maybe weaknesses that can be hurt. So I think I'm not gonna go with Brian's 2-2. I'm gonna go with 3-3. I think it's gonna be an exciting a game for you, because it's not going to be a game for you two. One or both of you two is going to have to go and get heart tablets after this. I think, but for the neutrals, I think it's going to be probably one of the best games of the first half of the season, at least. But not for you two.
No, it's not gonna be fun.
you two be on the Valiant.
We're gonna have a terrible time.
we're literally gonna have a terrible time. As confident as I sound, it'll be 2-0, and all of a sudden, we'll score 1. I'm like, oh no.
It might even be one of those where you get your 2 goals in the first 10 minutes and go, you scored too early.
I'm the type to say that stuff. So yeah.
2-0 and 3-1 for both of
Ambitious.
the lads. And 2-2 for Brian and 3-3 for me, and I'm going to stick with that one. But it just remains to say, hang on. Brian says Alan will just be looking over his shoulder for Haaland. He's not hard to miss, to be fair. As good as he is with a football, he is kind of a Timu Triple H from wrestling. Or a Wish, whatever one you want to have for those really cheap, bad products. But for us, we're going to be back on Thursday for the evening podcast for the Thursday when we look forward to the Liverpool game. I believe tomorrow morning will be the morning coffee show for those people who have flexi time, work from home, or have no jobs. It'll just be me working at 6 a.m. and wishing I was on the morning coffee show. Big hello to Philip. When he says big up, Mackie, he means I'm fat, just in case you two are wondering. But we will see everybody next week. Timuchin will be back, I'm sure. And I just hope it's a good weekend of soccer because the international week was awful. We'll have Thursday night mishaps, but we will see. I like the changes there. Well done. You're nailed to those score lines now. Like, we'll see what happens for next week. But for everybody else, make sure you are following us on the YouTube and the Facebook and Instagram and X, formerly known as Twitter, formerly known as Prince, formerly known as the artist, formerly known as, and then a Patreon for all the good extra goodies. But we're all off to be political and talk about Everton, essentially. That's the only politics we want. How that team never gets relegated is beyond me. But we'll see everybody next week. Enjoy the weekend of real soccer, not this other nonsense where people pretend to be playing for their country and then switch to another one. Talk about you, Declan Rice. Thank you, Alan.
Jack Grealish get more of this hate?
Well, because he stopped playing when it was the youth teams. That's why. And he's also a nice guy. If you see all that YouTube video stuff, he
cheered against you guys.
Yeah, but he left when he was 17. Declan Rice sang all the IRA songs. That's what makes it worse. He supported the terrorists, and then he didn't like the terrorists. And England's manager played for Ireland 40 times as well. It just gets worse and worse and worse. But we will see everybody next Tuesday. Have a fantastic weekend. Here's the trap music to play us into the nonsense on NBC and all those other channels. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Jake. Peace out. We will see you next time.